cubes, 8 cubes, 8 cubes, 8 cubes, 8 cubes. Hey guys, Larry here, and welcome back to another episode of Designer's Edge. This video, it's everything we can learn about game design from Marvel Snap, Part 1. But before we get into the video, a little bit of trivia for you. If you've been following the channel and you know the story of how I got here as a game developer in the industry, the producer who got me my first job as a designer in the game development industry, also named Larry, is on the production team at Second Dinner, who is bringing you Marvel Snap. It's funny how things work out. So with that said, I do have to say this, no part of this video or my relationship with him has anything to do with anything I'm about to say. I was not paid to endorse the game. I'm just gonna pull out the nuggets of game design that I think are gonna help you, a future budding or a current game designer who is looking for some tips on how to get better at designing strategy games. And if you have no idea what Marvel Snap is, I'm gonna try to give you a primer on the game in a minute or so. Okay, build a deck of heroes and villains. Each card has a noticeable energy cost in blue on the left and strength or point value in orange on the right. Some cards also have abilities. Each battle, there are 3 locations to win. Each location lets you play up to 4 cards there. At the end of 6 turns, you win every location where you have a higher score than your opponent does. You win the game by winning at least 2 of the 3 locations. You can also win all 3 if you like. Winnings, you upgrade your cards, you unlock new cards, you improve your deck, you play again. Another victory condition that I can bring up is you can just also make your opponent retreat. So there's another win condition. All right, let's get into the design stuff. Okay, so I'm breaking this video up into a couple of parts because there's some really good information and I don't want to just cram all this into one video when I know that there's probably 2 videos, maybe even 3, on some of the key features of Marvel Snap that I think can actually help you design game better. Forgive my notes, again, I'm not home, I'm doing this on the fly. Today, we're gonna dive into what I think they do really well, is use controlled chaos that their game allows you to experience, which creates so much replayability, it creates so much strategy, very easy to get into, but very, very deep when you start putting together all the math behind how this game plays so well. So obviously the first question I'm sure is on your mind, what is controlled chaos and how I'm using it today? And how does Marvel Snap use it or utilize it to make their game so awesome? Let's break it down, shall we? So when I talk about controlled chaos, I'm really leaning into randomness here. There's a lot of randomization that happens in the game, but the game is not itself pure random. For example, when I draw a card, I get Spider-Man or maybe Cyclops. I don't get cauliflower, right? Like I draw a card, I don't get play Monopoly. I don't get something that doesn't exist outside of the confines of what I expect. Although the result that I'm turning over is random, it's at least from a pool of guaranteed results. If I know that they have 150 hero cards, they might have more, I'm not sure, but it feels like it's about 150 cards. Or maybe I just suck and I haven't gotten them all. But from a pool of, let's say, 100 plus cards, I know that every time I turn over a card, I'm gonna get a card in there. That's why it's controlled chaos, because although whatever card I turn over is random, it's random within the confines of how many cards exist. But that leads to variance. The reason why I say that is because deck size is next. You can have a deck of no less than or no more than 12 cards when you're building your deck. You have 12 cards to work with. Now there's 150 plus cards to actually make your deck from. So therefore, every time you play a deck, obviously somebody is gonna have some different combination of 12 cards from that deck. Some people may be playing a deck that's about, turn 6 dominance. Some people may be playing a deck that's about movement mechanics. Some people may be playing a deck that's just about on reveal mechanics. There's so many different strategies you can get because of the variance. Although every player knows how many cards there are, and you could have any amount of those cards in your possession, if not all of them, you can only bring 12 cards to the battlefield. So therefore, they know to expect some sort of strategy based around 12 cards, but they can at least trust that it's not pure random, which is I turn over a card and it's cauliflower. Although sometimes you do get a rock. But Larry, of course, it's not pure random. Who would make a game that just lets anything happen? Well, some people do claim to try to go for that as a mechanic, but let's just be real here. The reason why controlled chaos, as we're calling it here today, works is because it gives me the confidence to start building strategies against. It at least lets me know of all these possible things that could happen, what direction of strategy would you like to go in based on your understanding of all those things. That's the reason why a strategy game works, is because there's something for you to believe in, there's something for you to anticipate, there's something for you to build towards, instead of just, if I can do anything, I just declare myself the winner. If I can do anything, I'm just gonna, like, obviously that doesn't make any damn sense, but you have to understand that the reason why the constraints are there is because that's where the creativity comes from. That's where the ideas come from. That's where people start trying to figure out the best strategy. Anything that works within the 150 cards can basically give you a strategy, but people want to find the best strategy. People want to find the most efficient strategy or the optimal strategy. All the designers and developers at Marvel Snap know that's exactly what players are going to try to do. They're going to want to figure out what the best strategy is. They're going to want to figure out what the optimal strategy is. And they intentionally designed the game to not allow that to be effective.
Wait, what? They designed the game to not allow you to find out the best strategy, the optimal strategy?
Yes, that is exactly right. They designed the game to not allow you to have the best strategy. Because here's a problem with players who find the best strategy. When players find the best strategy, that's all that they do. They literally do the exact same thing every single time. And what's the fun in that? That's not a game. So to save you from yourself, to save you from just finding the thing that works every time and only ever doing that, kind of like throwing fireballs in Street Fighter or throwing random shoryukens, like when we were kids. Like obviously as adults we don't do that, that's Bush League. But when you were a kid, for sure, you found the attack that your opponent couldn't handle and you spam the hell out of it. I think Justin Wong even still does that today. When there's more than 12 cards to make your deck, and you can only make a deck with 12 cards, that introduces variance because every opponent has a high likelihood of showing up with different cards than yours. So that's variance. It varies. Who you play, what you're gonna play, or what you're gonna play against varies, both on your side in building your deck and on your opponent's side when they build their deck. Moving forward, there's another level of variance, which is cards have effects that mix and match with each other. So based on the cards that you bring to the battlefield, you'll see some have abilities that say all cards that have ongoing can happen twice, or I just simply double the power of this location, or hey, after you play me, move everything to the right. Like I'm just pulling this out of my butt from memory, but basically some cards have abilities which modify the results or amplify the results of things that happen on the battlefield. And there's a second layer of this, which is the stages. Now, although every battle has 3 battlegrounds, sometimes the battlegrounds have effects as well. For example, one of my favorites so far has been Bar Sinister, where when you play a card at Bar Sinister, you can basically get 3 additional copies of that card at that location. That's been a great strategy. If you have a turn 6 strategy, like playing the Hulk, you can get 4 Hulks at one location instead of 1. That means going from 12 points to 48 points, which is a fantastic score. It's not the same 3 stages every time. However many stages there are, it feels like there's maybe 40, I'm guessing again. Out of the 40 stages, I'm just gonna do air quotes, out of the 40 stages, only 3 show up from the start. There are some cards that have abilities to change stages, so maybe you might see 4 different stages. Oh, on top of that, every round, every game, the stages change. So where one game you might have a Ruins, you might have a Raft, and you might have a Bar Sinister. The next game, you could have a Cloning Vats, you could have a Danger Room, and you could have, I don't know, some other place. I've only been playing for a few days. And now you get it. So even if you were to try to build a great deck strategy, there's another level of variance that you have to be concerned about, which is, well, how does my deck strategy play given certain types of stages? How does my deck strategy play against certain types of players, right? You can't control the stages that come out initially, and you can't control what the other player is gonna do or how they've built their deck. So more layers of the onion start to peel away and show you why you can't simply just build one deck that rules them all. One deck that rules them all. all of that is to say, I wholeheartedly support and endorse the next thing that I'm about to tell you, which is in this game, there is no prime or ultimate strategy that always wins. There is no 100% efficiency, do this every time strategy and you will win. You have to play your deck to the battlefield, to the opponent. And as soon as any one of those things changes, so does your strategy. This game is as much about building a strategy in the deck building phase as it is about playing your strategy based on how the cards are laid out, based on how the locations are set up, based on how you are playing abilities, based on how your opponent is playing abilities. You have to do so much on the fly that it's just as important to be good at understanding the second half of the game as it is in understanding the deck building that goes into playing the game or being ready to play the game. There is no perfect deck. I've watched YouTubers who have put together mega decks who have climbed the ranks. But even in watching these videos of people who have gone, all the way up to top tier, who I think the one guy on YouTube's name is Trump. Forgive me if this video is old and the person has changed their name, but at the time of recording, I came across this YouTuber named Trump, who has done a lot in the Hearthstone community, is also making Marvel Snap videos right now. And he took a deck as high as he could go. He got outside of matching with other humans and is back to just matching with bots, and he's killing these bots. But even he will lose games when he's playing against other human players. Even he will lose games with probably the best, most effective, or most win efficient deck that has yet been produced, because you can get 98%, 97%, 96%, but you can't have a deck. This game, because of the way the game works, if we were to split the efficiency of a deck into two categories, i.e. the strength of the deck just as a deck, and then the versatility of the deck, those have to be two separate scores, because until you play your deck on the battlefields, you don't know if you're in a good situation or a bad situation based on your deck. You can only influence or play based on what you see happening on the battlefield. So even if we were to say there is a possibility to make a 50 out of 100 for the score that you get for building your deck, or even if we call it 100 and then there's 200 scores, there's a deck building score and then there's a deck playing score because of your versatility. Let's say your deck building score is 100. You have the best deck. Literally, as soon as you go into the battlefield, the value of your deck changes immediately. If you have locations that play to your deck, then maybe you get another high score. If you have locations that don't play to your deck, maybe you get a lower score. Does your deck allow you to change those locations? Does your opponent's deck allow you to change the locations? Now you're starting to see, with all this controlled chaos, with all of this known quantity variance that can occur, you can see why there's no perfect deck. There's no one-hitter quitter in this game. There are things that are effective, there are things that are considered to be optimal, but those are synonyms for this phrase which I'm about to say, which is chasing perfection. It will never be perfection. Maybe you have a deck that has a 95% win rate. You don't have a deck that has a 100% win rate, and you never will. And that is another reason why I think the game is brilliant, because you have to earn your wins. You cannot simply just follow the formula like a stun-locking rogue in World of Warcraft in the early days. As long as I do these 6 buttons at this period of time, you will never be able to respond, and I can one turn kill you every single time. Because I'm in stealth, I get to choose when we engage, and I have enough power and enough sense of how to use my abilities to make sure you never get to respond. I am actually not playing a game. I'm simply just initiating and completing a sequence. There's no change, there's no variance, there's no skill in the sense that I'm responding to things changing on the battlefield. I'm not doing anything that's requiring me to change my strategy when I'm stun locking you. I'm simply rolling up to you with my mace spec, getting my procs, and taking you out of the game. There's nothing you could do. That's not a game. Marvel Snap, no matter how much min-maxing you try to do, no matter how much you try to load strategy into your deck, the amount of variance that you have to account for that happens on the battlefield that's built into the game means there will never be a perfect deck. Means that every deck has a winning chance and has a losing chance, meaning everybody gets to have fun. No matter what deck you make, even if you had what could be considered a perfect deck, if someone else was playing it, not you, they might have a worse time than you. They may turn your 95% win rate deck into a 30% win rate deck because they don't know how to play into the combos you've set up. They don't know or don't have the fortitude, so to speak, to wait for a turn 5, turn 6 kill, and maybe they play something early because they want an early point lead for the intimidation factor. There are so many different ways why a single decision can change the outcome in this game. Yet it's super simple, super fast, and you can play it in sometimes less than a minute and 15, a minute and 20 seconds. You can play it in 5 seconds really if your opponent pulls out right away because the first location turns over something very unfavorable, like shuffle 5 rocks into your deck. Every time that one shows up, I'll quit right away. Granted, I'm sure it's fun to play through sometimes. I enjoy the game when I get to an enjoyable experience by turn 6, regardless if I win or lose. But if I feel like both of us are gonna get kicked in the nuts at the beginning, I'd rather lose my 1 point. That's just me. Actually, in between cuts, I took some time to think about it. The reason why I quit every single time that we get the location that shovels rocks into your deck, especially right away, is I wanna know that I beat you because I beat you fairly, right? Like where in the deck those rocks show up can actually make you make different decisions. Like if you're waiting on a turn 5, turn 6 and you don't get it, I'm not beating you at your best. I'm actually beating you with a hand tied behind your back. Now granted, there was also a hand tied behind my back. Like we were both fairly hindered. It's the fact that they're shuffled into the deck means that like, hey, you're gonna be put at a severe disadvantage because what if your next 5 cards are rocks? And what if my next 5 cards are hero cards or cards that I can actually use? Without you being any worse than me, you have a significant disadvantage compared to me who now has a significant advantage. And I think that because even though it is a fairly applied negative to us both, I simply don't even want to participate. I don't even want to win in a game where I know that we've both been hindered from the start. I would rather both of us get a benefit. I would rather both of us get something that makes us excited about continuing to play cards because the real enjoyment is winning at turn 6 or winning at turn 7. Not, haha, we both got kicked in the nuts before we decided to see who's the fastest. Because both of us are gonna run slower than we're capable of, and that's just not fun. So, to all the people who came to this video to learn a little bit about design and how they can take everything that we just talked about to make their games better, here we are at the end of the first real design tutorial with some information. This is my speech. My fellow Americans, to all the people who are here designing strategy games, here's the lesson. Lesson 1, less is more. Less cards, meaning out of a pool of 150 cards, you can only pick 12. Less stages. Out of a pool of 40 stages, you can pick, or you may experience 3. And because of this, because of the variance that you can account for that may actually show up, there's a surprise every game. Thank you, Obama. Appreciate you, man. And lesson 2 that we take away from this, the strategy on the fly is just important as the deck building strategy. If you're gonna be building strategy games, if there is any sort of planning phase, or if there is any sort of, hey, I understand this game to the point where I'm building a strategy that I go into battle with, make sure that your game still has room for, okay, so that's what you want to do, but now something has changed. Either randomness built into the game or randomness introduced to the game by a opposing player's decision making, or randomness introduced to the game because of your own change in decision making based on something that changed in the battlefield. And you see, we get butterfly effect from there. The decision making that your players make on the fly is just as important as the decision making that the players make when building their deck and going into battle. So please incorporate that in your designs if you want them to be really great. That's lesson 2, because again, if you design it that way so that you can't just predetermine outcome before you play the match, that's how you end up with people being able to 1-turn kill. That's how you end up with people being able to stun lock. You have systems that basically just allow somebody to steamroll without response from the other player. You have removed what we call a challenge from a game, and you have simply created, as long as I can execute, I'm going to win. But did I ever play? Lesson 3, they keep it simple. It's not complicated. The rules are easy to understand, but because of the variance, because of the amount of different rules, because of the amount of different ways that cards can affect each other or that stages can affect each other, they have created something that is considered, on my terms, very deep. Every rule that they write is in plain and very easy to understand English. You don't need an encyclopedia, a calendar, an almanac, or any other extra material to play this game. Everything you have is right on the table, right in front of you and up here. Next, the variance and their use of controlled chaos, I think, again, is brilliant. There's enough to understand how to play within 10 minutes. Oh, 10 minutes. There's enough to understand how to play within 1 minute. And next, variance and their use of controlled chaos is where the real strategy and depth reveal themselves. All of this together is what makes this game fun. It's simple, it's fast, it's easy to understand. It has fantastic rules and mechanics and ways that I can pull or push advantages in different areas that I need to. And there's always a surprise. Since we play simultaneously, I don't know what you're doing until you do it at the same time as what I do it. And what's great about that is I'm responding to your action, and at the same time, when I make my next decision, I also have to anticipate what your next choice is going to be. And that anticipation leaves so much juicy room for fun. Simultaneous versus asynchronous. I'm going to make a video on this at some point, but we're going to hold on to that. But that's what's happening in Marvel Snap. Because we are playing simultaneously, I get to respond and receive at the same time. So I have no idea what may be waiting for me whenever I place a card. My opponent feels the same way. So there's room for surprise. There's room for fun just waiting there. And I think that's brilliant. Certainly not least, but definitely last. Marvel Snap is such a good game, but it's actually 2 games in 1. But I'm not going to explain that part today. Come back for the next video to get part 2, where I talk about how Marvel Snap is actually 2 games in 1 and what you can take from that to make your games better. And until then, guys, I just want to say thanks for sticking around and watching this video. If you like this content, great. Please subscribe because more is on the way. If this content isn't for you, but maybe you know somebody who does want to become a better video game designer, then maybe share it with them if it's going to benefit them. That's all I ask. Well, I'm going to go play some games. Again, not sponsored, not endorsed. This is just what I wanted to make content on. And I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.